What if I told you that England's greatest queen might have exploded in her coffin, and for 260 years, her rotting corpse literally crushed her sister beneath her in a royal tomb of horror? Picture this. It's a bitter February morning in 1869, and the ancient stones of Westminster Abbey seem to tremble beneath the echo of pickaxes and the muffled grunts of sweating workmen. Flickering torchlight sends monstrous shadows crawling across Gothic arches, as if the Abbey itself were alive and breathing secrets it has kept buried for centuries. The cold air, thick with centuries of dust, carries a dark undercurrent, the unmistakable cloying scent of royal decay, trapped beneath stone and silence. Amid this macabre scene stands Dean Arthur Stanley, a man torn between duty and morbid curiosity, his trembling hands clutching fragile architectural drawings and burial records that refuse to agree. Somewhere beneath these sacred marble floors lies the lost tomb of King James I, a vault missing for more than 2 centuries. But what Stanley is about to uncover will spiral far beyond a mere royal burial mystery. It will tear open the hidden royal secrets of England's dark history, revealing the real horror story lurking beneath the golden legends of the monarchy. Secrets of vaults stacked like grotesque bunk beds of lead coffins that might burst under the pressure of noxious gases of monarchs reduced to relics for sale to the highest bidder. And at the heart of it all is Elizabeth IV, the Virgin Queen, whose legendary defiance shaped empires, but whose flesh entombed in lead may have become a ticking time bomb of putrefaction. Before we plunge into this chilling tale of royal tomb mystery and forbidden truths, if you're captivated by hidden royal secrets, real horror stories from history and the dark corridors of Westminster Abbey, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more forbidden glimpses into the shadows of the past. And tell me in the comments, do you think even a queen deserves peace in death? Or should we keep digging for the secrets kings and queens thought they'd take to the grave, before we descend any deeper into this royal tomb? Mystery of hidden royal secrets, forbidden truths, and real horror stories lurking beneath Westminster Abbey's sacred stones are the kind of dark history you crave. Make sure you hit that like button and subscribe for more journeys into the shadows where monarchs and mortality collide. And tell me in the comments, do you believe even a queen deserves peace in death? Or should we keep tearing open the lead coffins of the past to expose what lies rotting inside? Because what you're about to hear is not merely a story of a missing royal tomb, but the chilling truth of how power politics and decay entwined beneath marble floors. And at the center of this horror stands Elizabeth I, the Virgin Queen, whose body may have become a ticking time bomb of noxious vapors, her royal remains transformed into a grotesque spectacle hidden in the darkness of a sealed vault. Yet to truly understand why her end was so monstrous, we must go back to where this nightmare began, not in the Abbey's depths in 1869, but on a freezing March morning in 1603, inside the fading glow of Richmond Palace, where a queen once danced and dazzled now trembled, on the edge of death, haunted by omens no crown could protect her from. On a bitter March morning in 1603, within the aging walls of Richmond Palace, Elizabeth I, the woman who had once stared down the Spanish Armada and dazzled foreign ambassadors with her razor wit, was no longer England's radiant Virgin Queen, but a pale, trembling figure on the edge of mortality. For 4 days she lay speechless on the cold floor, as if even the royal bed was too sacred a place to surrender her weakening body. In a room that smelled of stale tapestries and fading power, Elizabeth refused to lie down, gripping life with desperate fury, as though she knew that the horizontal was a one-way path to death. Instead, she stood motionless for 15 agonizing hours, her frail frame trembling under the weight of velvet gowns, until finally her strength gave way, and she collapsed onto a floor covered hastily in cushions by terrified ladies-in-waiting who whispered prayers beneath their breath. Imagine it, the most powerful woman in Europe reduced to a silent monument of fear, her hollow eyes staring into visions no crown could protect her from. And the omens gathered around her like a gathering storm. Elizabeth Southwell, one of her ladies, claimed the Queen was haunted by phantom glimpses of her own wasted body, and a playing card pierced by a nail appeared mysteriously on the Queen's chair, a chilling token that felt less like mere mischief and more like a curse. For a monarch who had built her reign upon the image of divine destiny, this was a real horror story, unfolding in flesh and bone, a living nightmare of hidden royal secrets and dark history the court could scarcely comprehend. Her body, once celebrated for its regal bearing, was now a vessel of decay, teeth, lost hair thinning, and a stench that even courtiers who once fought for her favor could no longer stomach. The pearly smile that captivated Europe was now blackened gums, and those closest to her began to recoil in subtle horror, even as they maintained the mask of courtly reverence. And yet, as ghastly as these final days were, they were only the prelude to an even darker chapter, a chapter that would see Elizabeth's royal remains transformed into a secret stacked above her sister in a royal tomb that held horrors no living courtier could ever have imagined, and that we're about to uncover next. When Elizabeth finally surrendered to death on March 24, 1603, the passing of England's Virgin Queen sent shockwaves through a kingdom built on her image of eternal vigor and divine rule. Yet even in death, Elizabeth was destined to become part of a hidden royal secret, a real horror story concealed beneath the shimmering facade of royal pageantry. On April 28, 1603, London became a stage of collective grief as Elizabeth's funeral cortege wound its solemn path from Whitehall to Westminster Abbey, moving like a black river through streets swollen with mourners. Her coffin, a heavy fortress of lead encased within an outer shell of wood, was draped in a deep purple cloth, a color reserved for royalty and mourning alike. And above it lay an effigy so lifelike that gasps rippled through the crowd as if the Queen herself still ruled, scepter in one hand and crown perched regally upon her head. This effigy was more than art. It was royal propaganda, a carefully sculpted illusion to convince the nation that Elizabeth's power persisted even as her mortal flesh lay sealed in darkness. The streets, the rooftops, the very gutters of London overflowed with people desperate to glimpse this spectral vision of their queen. Chroniclers wrote of a sound rising from the masses, a groaning, sighing, and weeping so profound that no man could remember the like in living memory. And yet, while velvet banners and royal trumpets proclaimed the Virgin Queen's glory beneath that lead coffin, lay an inescapable truth. Royal remains were still just flesh, subject to the same corruption and stench as any peasant's bones. Lead coffins were meant to preserve dignity and suppress the horrific odors of decay, but as history has shown, they often became ticking time bombs of putrefaction, sealed vaults that concealed horrors waiting to burst forth. Elizabeth's body, now hidden beneath layers of royal fabric and lead, was the beginning of a secret burial journey that would end with her stacked above her own half-sister Mary in a vault that would become one of the darkest royal tomb mysteries Westminster Abbey has ever held. And while the funeral effigy glowed with regal permanence, the reality below the Abbey stones was far grimmer, and what came next would transform royal mourning into a grotesque tale of power politics and decay, a tale we must follow deeper into the shadows to truly understand. 3 years after Elizabeth's grand funeral in 1606, a new monarch, James I, would make a decision that would forever bind two rival queens together in the most grotesque and haunting way imaginable, transforming royal death into a hidden royal secret and a real horror story that still festers beneath Westminster Abbey's ancient stones. Driven by political calculation as much as piety, James ordered Elizabeth's remains to be moved from her initial resting place in her grandfather Henry VIII's vault, and instead placed above those of her half-sister Mary Tudor in the north aisle of Henry VII's chapel. Think of the symbolism seared into that act. Elizabeth, the Protestant Virgin Queen, who had executed a Catholic rival and burned heretics, now stacked quite literally atop Mary the Catholic Queen, infamous for sending hundreds to the flames. Sisters by blood, yet mortal enemies by faith and politics, forced to share an eternal prison of stone, and led their royal tomb. Mystery, a grotesque parody of unity. The arrangement was anything but peaceful. Elizabeth's massive lead coffin, an imposing sarcophagus that could weigh over 500 pounds, was simply placed directly on top of Mary's, creating what might best be described as a macabre double-decker tomb, a detail that historians and lovers of dark history alike still whisper about in disbelief. Above ground, James commissioned a magnificent white marble monument crafted by Maximilian Colt and painted by Jan de Kritz, an effigy designed to enshrine Elizabeth's glory forever, her sculpted figure adorned in royal robes, with inscriptions praising her reign. Yet beneath that shining marble slept a far darker truth. Mary, whose brief and bloody rule had been marked by the burning of Protestants, was relegated to an afterthought, her coffin buried both physically and symbolically beneath her sister's towering legacy. The Latin epitaph tried desperately to spin this uncomfortable truth into royal propaganda, proclaiming partners in throne and grave, here we sleep, Elizabeth and Mary sisters, in the hope of the resurrection. But the reality was less a peaceful slumber, and more a grotesque image of royal remains stacked like luggage flesh, pressing down upon flesh in an embrace neither sister would have ever chosen. And this unnatural burial, hidden in darkness for centuries, set the stage for one of the greatest royal tomb mysteries that would draw Dean Arthur Stanley into the labyrinthine depths of Westminster Abbey, searching for answers buried under stone secrets waiting to be unearthed. By the time the 1860s dawned over Victorian England, the hallowed ground of Westminster Abbey was groaning beneath centuries of royal secrets, lost burial records, and dark history waiting to be disturbed. Amid this labyrinth of hidden royal secrets stepped Dean Arthur Stanley, a man with the relentless curiosity of an explorer and the meticulous mind of a scholar driven by one haunting question: where exactly lay the tomb of King James III? The vault's precise location had vanished from memory, tangled in contradictory burial records and the dusty chaos of the Abbey's archives. Permission for a search was granted from none other than Queen Victoria herself, who understood that the Abbey was more than sacred ground. It was a vault of forbidden truths and royal tomb mysteries that the British monarchy could ill afford to leave unresolved. On February 11, 1869, a date exactly 366 years after Elizabeth of York died in childbirth, a coincidence that still fuels speculation about hidden symbolism, Stanley's workmen descended into the Abbey's depths, their torchlights sputtering against ancient stone, illuminating twisted shadows that seemed to whisper secrets long held by the Abbey's Gothic arches. As chisels scraped stone and dust rained from the ceiling like centuries falling away, they finally breached the vault, where Elizabeth and Mary's remains lay entombed together in silence. And the scene that met them was the stuff of real horror stories, a tableau that would echo through time and cement Westminster Abbey as the setting for one of the darkest royal tomb mysteries in English history. The vault was cramped cold and heavy, with the suffocating staleness of sealed centuries. In the wavering glow of torchlight, two lead coffins appeared stacked like grotesque bunk beds. Elizabeth's coffin above, larger and distinctly molded to the shape of a human body, the lead tarnished to a greenish patina that made it look both alien and ancient, as if conjured from some royal nightmare. And for a fleeting moment, one could almost imagine the weight of centuries pressing down, not just on the coffins below, but on the very soul of England's royal legacy. But it wasn't merely the sight of stacked coffins that sent a chill skittering down Stanley's spine. It was the markings etched into the metal, a cryptic graffiti that hinted at secrets. Even the Abbey's towering stones might struggle to contain secrets we must confront next to understand how fragile even royal tombs truly were. As Dean Arthur Stanley peered deeper into the darkness of the newly opened vault, his torchlight glinting off tarnished lead, he discovered not merely the solemn silence of royal death, but a shocking, almost profane reminder that even the sacred resting places of England's mightiest monarchs were never entirely secure. Etched into the lead coffin of Elizabeth was a name and a date that seemed to scream across the centuries: John Ware, 1645. It was as if history itself had reached out with a scratched message, defacing the royal tomb mystery with a human fingerprint from a time of civil war and chaos. Who was John Ware? A workman hired to maintain the Abbey during the turbulence of the English Civil War, a grave robber lured by rumors of royal relics hidden in coffins of lead, or perhaps a curious official brazen enough to carve his name into the final fortress of England's legendary queen. The truth remains locked away in the shadows, fueling a dark history of speculation among historians and lovers of forbidden royal secrets. Yet the very presence of that graffiti on the Virgin Queen's coffin was a punchline of sorts, a darkly ironic testament to how fragile even royal dignity truly was. For all the rituals, monuments, and effigies proclaiming Elizabeth's eternal power, one man with a sharp tool and a moment alone had managed to scar her lead coffin with a permanent mark. A reminder that royal vaults were far less inviolable than the monarchy would have the world believe. And it raises an unsettling question that reverberates through the Abbey's silent arches. If a man like John Ware could carve his name into Elizabeth's coffin, what else might have been done while the vaults lay unguarded and unseen, in an era when royal relics, locks of hair teeth, even embalming fluids were prized like sacred artifacts? The thought of an unguarded vault stuffed with royal corpses would have been an irresistible temptation for anyone craving profit power or just a piece of forbidden history. And while the name John Ware lingers like a ghost on Elizabeth's coffin, the true horror may lie not merely in a scratch on tarnished metal, but in what those sealed lead coffins might still conceal beneath their weight and silence, a grotesque secret of pressure gas and decay waiting to explode into the daylight, a nightmare we now must confront. But perhaps the most chilling truth hidden within this royal tomb mystery was something the Victorians dared only hint at. In their carefully worded records, the horrifying possibility that Elizabeth I's lead coffin, sealed for centuries, had become a pressurized chamber of rotting death, a ticking time bomb of noxious gases that might one day burst forth in a grotesque explosion. For as much as lead coffins were heralded as the ultimate guardians of royal dignity, designed to seal in decay and block out the smell of mortality, they were in reality a cruel paradox, transforming the sanctity of royal burial into a secret chamber of creeping horror. When a body decomposes in a perfectly sealed environment, it releases a lethal cocktail of gases: methane, hydrogen, sulfide, ammonia. Compounds that twist flesh into liquid bloat organs and build unstoppable pressure inside the coffin's metal walls. And there were whispers, fueled by accounts like that of Elizabeth Southwell, that Elizabeth's corpse, so full of volatile vapors, might have exploded within her lead sarcophagus, showering the inside of the coffin with royal remains in a macabre spectacle, worthy of any real horror story. Though Southwell's reliability was later questioned, the science behind such a nightmare was disturbingly real, a hidden royal secret few dared discuss in polite Victorian society. Other vault openings across England only fueled the terror when Edward IV's tomb was disturbed at Windsor. Black liquid several inches deep pooled beneath his decayed bones, a mixture of rotted flesh, liquefied wood, and the slow leak of centuries trapped under pressure. And imagine the colossal weight of Elizabeth's coffin itself, possibly over 500 pounds, pressing relentlessly upon Mary's coffin below for more than 2.5 centuries, forging a grotesque sandwich of royal flesh and lead that no velvet drapery or marble effigy could ever truly conceal. It is in this dark science of entombment that the real horror story unfolds, reminding us that not even queens can escape the ruthless chemistry of time and decay. Yet Elizabeth's fate was hardly unique, for British history is littered with tales of monarchs whose final resting places were disturbed, dissected, and even plundered, transforming royal tombs into grim spectacles of curiosity and greed. A haunting pattern we must now explore to fully grasp the brutal fate that awaited kings and queens long after their crowns were laid aside. Elizabeth and Mary's grotesque entombment was not an isolated horror story, but part of a far more chilling pattern in Britain's dark history, a pattern in which royal remains became commodities, curiosities, and sometimes even tools of political propaganda. For in the centuries following the reigns of these monarchs, royal tombs were opened again and again, each time revealing not only the decaying flesh of kings and queens, but also the disturbing truth about how the living treated the dead. In 1163, King Henry II ordered the tomb of Edward the Confessor opened, driven by both religious devotion and royal curiosity. There, inside the sacred vault, Edward's body was discovered miraculously preserved, a long white beard still flowing his corpse, adorned in cloth of gold and embroidered mitre perched upon his skull, and purple shoes still sheathing his feet. A hidden royal secret turned into a holy spectacle. Yet far from leaving the saintly remains untouched, Henry II seized Edward's pilgrim ring as a relic and stripped the cloth of gold to fashion splendid ecclesiastical robes, transforming a royal tomb mystery into treasure for the church and crown alike. Centuries later, the desecration continued in even stranger forms. Duke Humphrey of Gloucester's tomb at St. Albans became a macabre tourist attraction, as women flocked to siphon off embalming fluid, convinced it could cure wrinkles and preserve beauty, a real horror story masquerading as medieval skincare. When the fluid finally ran dry, visitors began plucking away the Duke's hairnails and scraps of his embalmed flesh until only small fragments of bone remained, a grotesque commerce in royal remains. Even Mary Tudor, Elizabeth's own sister and rival in death as in life, was not spared indignity. In 1784, her coffin was unnecessarily opened at St. Mary's in Bury St. Edmund's revealing hair still flowing in golden waves nearly 2 feet long, a haunting glimpse of royal beauty preserved amid decay. And then there was Richard II, whose tomb was pried open during restoration work in 1871, his skeleton nearly perfect only for relics of woodcloth and leather to vanish into a cigarette box stored for decades in the basement of London's National Portrait Gallery, a hidden royal secret reduced to forgotten clutter. And perhaps the most appalling tale belongs to Catherine of Valois, whose corpse was displayed to paying tourists at Westminster Abbey, her body propped up in a wooden coffin so that visitors could gawk at the remains of a queen, proof that even in death royal women could not escape becoming objects for public consumption. These episodes reveal a pattern of violation and morbid curiosity that strips the monarchy of its marble grandeur and exposes the vulnerability beneath royal crowns. Yet for all these acts of desecration, the monarchy still clung desperately to its crafted image, projecting power and eternal majesty through marble effigies and sumptuous monuments, a stark contrast to the hidden truths lurking beneath which we must now confront to see just how wide the chasm is between royal image and the grim reality sealed in lead and stone. Above the vault where Elizabeth and Mary lay entombed in their grotesque leaden embrace, King James III commissioned a monument that shimmered with the purest royal propaganda, a marble effigy crafted to immortalize Elizabeth, not as the frail, dying woman gasping for breath in her bedchamber, but as the eternal Virgin Queen poised in sovereign majesty. Sculpted by Maximilian Colt and painted with delicate brilliance by Jan de Kritz, the effigy once gleamed with vibrant life. Elizabeth draped in a crimson robe lined with ermine, a blue orb clutched in one regal hand, her marble face touched with flesh-toned pigments that brought a ghost of humanity to cold stone. At each corner of her monument crouched gilded lions, guardians of her imperial legacy. Yet today all traces of that color have vanished beneath centuries of dust and restoration, leaving behind a stark monochrome queen whose silent gaze masks the hidden royal secrets buried below. For this effigy was always a beautifully crafted lie designed to convince generations that Elizabeth's power and beauty had triumphed over the decay of time, a dazzling illusion concealing the real horror story that even monarchs cannot escape. Because the truth is that beneath that marble image lies a lead coffin molded in the shape of Elizabeth's body, its tarnished surface etched with Tudor roses, and the faint scratchings of intruders, like John Ware and possibly harboring the dreadful pressure of gases building within. The marble queen stands untouched above ground, but below her flesh has surrendered to the chemical violence of putrefaction, slowly collapsing in on itself, a haunting reminder that even the heart and stomach of a king, or in Elizabeth's case a queen, are powerless against the relentless alchemy of death. This is the chilling chasm between royal image and dark history, between propaganda carved in stone and the hidden royal secrets sealed in lead. And it is here in this silent conflict between marble and mortal decay that we glimpse the true horror lurking beneath the pageantry of monarchy. Yet Elizabeth's story doesn't end with cold marble or tarnished lead, because in the final moments of this tale we must reckon with how her fate became a mirror, reflecting the uncomfortable truths about power legacy and the living's endless fascination with the secrets of the dead, a reckoning we now must face in the shadows of Westminster Abbey. Elizabeth's story does not end with a marble effigy standing silent in Westminster Abbey, nor with the tarnished lead coffin that slowly surrenders to corrosion beneath centuries of royal dust. Instead, it lingers like a ghost in the corridors of power, a haunting reminder that even monarchs who commanded fleets, defied popes, and bent empires to their will are ultimately conquered by the same relentless forces that humble all flesh-time chemistry and the hidden royal secrets buried in the darkness. For while Elizabeth had proclaimed that she possessed the heart and stomach of a king, her mortal remains were no match for the chemical violence of putrefaction, nor for the political calculations that stacked her coffin above her sister's, transforming royal death into a grotesque parody of familial affection. This is the real horror story lurking beneath the velvet and marble of England's monarchy, a story that reveals how power once so absolute dissolves into nothing more than bone and dust-forgotten relics sold off piece by piece or locked away in cigarette boxes, gathering shadows in museum basements. The stench rising from Elizabeth's coffin might have faded long ago, but the moral odor remains the smell of a society that refuses to let its dead rest, that pries open coffins, carves names into lead, and sells fragments of kings and queens to collectors chasing pieces of forbidden history. Every time Elizabeth's vault was disturbed, it exposed not merely the secrets of the Virgin Queen's physical decay, but the far darker truth about the living, that we are endlessly fascinated by the suffering and downfall of those we once exalted. And perhaps that is why even today we cannot stop telling this story, cannot resist descending into the tombs beneath Westminster Abbey, driven by the same insatiable curiosity that led Dean Stanley to pry open vaults in search of lost kings. Because beneath the polished marble and regal inscriptions, beneath all the royal tomb mysteries and hidden truths, lies the single greatest secret of all, that in death queens and commoners alike share the same fate, and the silent darkness beneath the Abbey stones cares nothing for crowns or legacies. So the next time you walk through the echoing aisles of Westminster Abbey, remember that beneath your feet lies not just the memory of a queen, but the grim reality of what becomes of power, beauty, and royal blood. Once the last trumpet fades, a truth as chilling as any real horror story, and one that will keep echoing as long as we dare to keep digging for the secrets the dead tried so hard to take with them. And perhaps the real horror isn't what time and decay did to Elizabeth's body, but what her story reveals about us, the living who can't look away from royal tomb mysteries and hidden secrets, even when we know the cost is disturbing truths that gnaw at our sense of dignity. Because in the end, beneath every crown lies flesh destined for the same darkness, reminding us that power is fleeting and legends rot like any mortal remains. So tell me, in the comments, do you think we should leave the dead undisturbed or keep digging into the secrets they tried to take to their graves? If this glimpse into dark history and forbidden royal secrets fascinated you, save this video so you can revisit the shadows again, hit like to support more true horror stories from the past, and subscribe for journeys even deeper into the hidden corridors where history and horror collide. Because some secrets are too powerful to stay buried, and the next one might just change everything you thought you knew.